Chapter 7 of Winning His Way by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in a public domain. Chapter 7, in which Frank gets a large contract for printing from a local manufactory. On the following morning, Frank went to church with his mother, as was their custom, and in the afternoon he attended Sunday school, for he was a member of the Bible class. As a matter of course, he met Elsie Gray and Duncan Roach. The latter was both surprised and disgusted to hear that Frank and his mother had actually been asked to dine that afternoon with Judge Smith and his family. "I don't see what Judge Smith can be thinking about to ask such common people to his house," said Duncan to one of his cronies. When he went home, he hastened to carry the news to his father. "The judge must have an axe to grind," said Squire Roach, not at all pleased with the intelligence. "What kind of axe?" asked his son with a show of interest. "A political one, I presume," replied his father in a disgruntled tone. What the squire really feared was that Judge Smith might throw his influence over to the Argus, and thus help the interests of the Morris family. So he determined to get busy at once and try to offset any such move. Mr. Jebb and his associate Robinson were boarding at the Neptune House at the squire's expense, for reasons that the rich man would not have cared to have generally known, and he concluded to call on the ex-editor of the Argus that evening and go over the situation with him. On Monday morning, Frank Morris made a tour of the large business houses that had withdrawn their advertisements from his paper. His bright and convincing manner attracted the attention of the persons on whom he called, and he succeeded in recovering several of the paper's former patrons, and from others received promises of subsequent patronage. On the whole, he was satisfied with his morning's work. That afternoon he called on the manager of the Green River Lock and Bolt Factory and made a bid for their new catalog, which had to be delivered in time for the fall trade. Heretofore this work had been turned out in Chicago. It was a fair-sized job, as catalogs go, and very fat in printer's parlance, consisting largely of cuts flanked by short price lists on 6-point type, with no display matter other than a heading on each page. Judge Smith told Frank what the company paid for the previous year's edition, and he and Dan figured that the Chicago printing house had had a cinch, so Frank determined to put in an estimate for it at a slightly lower price. "Have you ever done any work like this before?" inquired the manager of the Bolt and Nut Works after Frank had introduced the object of his visit. "No, sir," replied the boy frankly. "How do you know, then, that you will be able to handle the job and get it out on time?" "The foreman of my composing room assures me that, with the necessary help, which we can easily bring from Chicago, we can do the work." "What kind of 6-point type have you?" "Ronaldson face." "That's satisfactory. Is it in good condition?" "Brand new." "Have you never used it on the paper?" "No, sir. Father got about 500 pounds of it dirt cheap at a sale in Chicago. He bought it with the intention of bidding on the state report, but was taken sick soon after, and the type is still in the original papers." "What presses have you? I mean large ones." "One 2-revolution hoe, on which we print the Argus." "And do you expect to run off this catalog on it, 5,000 impressions to each 16-page form, and print the paper too?" "I'll manage that, sir. If the paper interferes at any time, I'll send it over to the record press room." "I shall require a contract, on which you must furnish a guarantee that you will send me proofs of at least 8 pages a day until the composition is finished." "I'll agree to that if you'll promise to return proofs within 24 hours after receipt by you." "That's satisfactory. Who do you offer as a guarantor that you will fulfill your part of the contract?" "Judge Smith." "If Judge Smith will guarantee his performance, I will give you the work, and all our printing, for that matter, which is considerable, for I am in favor of helping home industries, all things being even. The Times has been doing our small job work, but I have no particular interest in sending it to Bentley. I prefer to have one establishment do all our printing, if possible." Frank picked up several news items on his way back to the office, where he found one of his father's old customers, one who had gone over to the Times, waiting to see him. "We have come back to the old ranch again, young man," said the visitor. "Glad to see you, Mr. Williams, and I hope we shall not lose you again. The Argus establishment is now under new management, and I guess I can give you satisfaction." Mr. Williams gave a small order for job printing and left. "Say, Frank, what do you think?" said Dan, coming in from the composing room for a moment. Bentley has fired Jinks from the Times office." "No, is that a fact?" "Why, he's been there for years, and I understood he was a good printer." "He's all right. Seems your man Billings, who went to work there Saturday, made an offer to Bentley to take Jinks's place at $2 a week less. Jinks is a union man and, of course, don't work under the scale, which was all Bentley gave him as foreman, so he had to get out. It's a shame, for Jinks has a big family and is anchored in Green River. It's a mean piece of business on Billings' part, but nothing more than one might expect of him. Tell Jinks he can come to work here 3 days a week for the present. That'll help you out, Dan, and give you a chance to attend to your outside work. I'll be able to give Jinks a steady position soon, as I'm sure of getting that contract for the Bolt and Lock Company's catalog. We'll want at least 4 first-class all-round jobbers. Jinks can go on the stone and a regular feeder on the cylinder for Gibson." "Gee, Frank, I see you're going to wake the office up in great shape. Bentley will turn green with envy when he hears you've got that job. He's been wanting to do that catalog himself, and you might have got it, only he was too mean to buy the type. It's lucky my father bought that 6-point Ronaldson. I couldn't afford to lay in new type at this stage of the game, even to catch that catalog." "Did the manager make any objection to the price we figured on?" asked Dan. "No. He said there'd be something like 192 pages this time, which, at $3.50 per page, that's 25 cents lower than the figures of the Chicago firm, will foot up $672 for the composition. The press work on 12 forms of 16 pages, 5,000 impressions at 50 cents a token, will amount to 120 or more. Total $792 for the job. The factory people will furnish the paper. I have figured the entire expense of producing the work to be less than $400, so I should make a fine profit." Jinks went to work the next morning. It was a busy day at the Argus office, for the paper came out early on Wednesday morning. Frank read all the proof, wrote a couple of the editorials, and about 2 columns of other matter. This latter included a catchy announcement of the forthcoming show of the On the Blink Company, billed at the Opera House on Thursday evening. His batch of exchanges furnished clippings for another 2 columns. Then Dan Harwood furnished a column and a half of his own spicy copy, which was one of the first things that most of the Green River readers of the Argus had been accustomed to glance over when they opened the paper, the absence of this matter after Dan had been discharged by Mr. Jebb being one of the causes of the decline of the circulation of the paper. Correspondence from the adjacent villages and various other communications took up 3 more columns, and the balance of the paper not occupied by advertisements was filled up with plate matter furnished by the Chicago Newspaper Union, the cost of which was largely taken out in advertising space, which the company filled to suit itself. Altogether, Mr. Jebb could not have improved on the Wednesday edition of the Argus, and many of Frank Morris's friends congratulated him upon the excellent start he had made. That afternoon he signed a contract with the Green River Bolt and Lock Company for their catalog, and he sent to Chicago for the sundry printing material he would require to aid in getting it out. End of Chapter 7.